For 57 years, the Association of Bay Area Governments, ABAG, has proven the region's 101 cities and towns and 9 Bay Area counties can and should work together on regional issues like housing, transportation, economic development, education, and environment.
Hey, good morning and welcome to ABAG's General Assembly. You're going to listen to and participate in the insightful conversation at the heart of regionalism, and you'll have an opportunity to listen to lessons learned on resilience and discuss with your peers.
ABAG is also coping with changing weather, which last year impacted events in the Bay Area and across the entire nation.
Nearly 1/3 of all counties in the United States, 3,009 counties, declared a natural disaster in the last calendar year. It is the new normal, and we should all be prepared. So I think ABAG can play an important role in that as we go forward.
Its 57th year marked the merger of the staffs of ABAG and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, while keeping 2 separate and independent organizations with a consolidated staff serving both governing boards.
And that happened on July 1st, 2017. This opportunity really offers the chance to make both organizations stronger, to make both organizations more effective on how we provide services to all of you. I'd like to turn over the presentation to Steve Heminger, the Executive Director of both ABAG and MTC.
Good morning to everybody. We have undertaken 2 major planning efforts with our new integrated planning department, one of them known as CASA and the other known as Horizon. What do we want the Bay Area to look like? And what are some possible futures? What if we have a very significant penetration of autonomous vehicles? Whether it's natural disasters, as President Rabbit just mentioned, which we may see more frequently, some of the political trends that we're seeing around the world and around our country in terms of populism, in terms of immigration, in terms of tariffs, all of those things can have very significant effects on our economy, on our transportation network, on our standard of living.
In breakout sessions, ABAG members tackled resiliency in 4 main topics. Wildfires.
We had, at one time, I believe, 800 fires. 800 fires. And because the winds were so incredible, 5,300 homes, and I think all told there are 7,000 structures.
It was a catastrophe. An absolute catastrophe.
I know folks that lost their home. I know someone who died in their home.
As Governor Brown has acknowledged, this may be the new normal.
Earthquakes.
Basically, a 7.0 earthquake happens every 150 years. $80 billion in damage is the likely scenario. If we don't do things now, the damage is really amazing. And in some of the scenarios, it takes a year basically for communities, some of them, to get their water back online.
Sea level rise.
We had a breakout session today to talk about the Resilient by Design program, a very exciting program where design teams from around the country, in fact from around the world, came up with 9 different projects in different segments of the Bay.
Energy.
We just finished a very dynamic, very vocal panel discussion on subject which was supposed to be very innocuous, energy, but it ended up on a very policy level.
How do agencies plan and pay for future infrastructure and those potential disasters?
Shut off the gas! Shut off electricity!
When the economic and political environments are more uncertain than ever. Keynote speaker Jeremy Nowak says the roadmap is already before us.
Jeremy is a distinguished visiting fellow at Drexel University's Lindy Institute for Urban Innovation. He created the Reinvestment Fund, one of the largest community investment institutions in the United States, and he chaired the board of the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia.
First, democracy in action, right? Everything's changed, right? And to some extent, what we're kind of looking at when we see, Brexit or Donald Trump is a kind of the representation, the reaction. Power has moved from the feds down through the states to the locals. The point we're trying to make is that even if it wasn't Donald Trump, the nature of change, the nature of how we fund the future, the nature of what we've got to do to reinvent institutions is really fundamentally different. When we thought about growth, we were really curious about what's happened in a bunch of cities, many of which have gone through significant crises like Pittsburgh. If you thought about Pittsburgh in the 70s, it was you couldn't see, right? It was steel town, part of the industrial belt. It lost all of its steel, almost all in the 70s was, bottoming out. People innovated, but what Pittsburgh did well, and here, by the way, their foundations, their philanthropy was really smart. They kept investing in centers of excellence, and they then built a technology industry. But Pittsburgh is a place where you don't, like San Francisco, you don't have to bribe companies to come. It's a place where you want to be because there's the research, there's the innovation, there's a great sense of place there now. It is a place that has really reinvented itself. And one of the places we went to is Indianapolis. What they got good at in creating an amateur sports place is they got good at the habits of collaboration. And they have created an incredible shift in their economy, which is really quite dynamic, quite exciting. It was not an ecosystem, it was an ecosystem. There are some people that really drove it, but what it was really about was a place responding to a crisis and trying to figure out how you create the habits of change, the habits of collaboration across sectors. You know, it's chaos federally, but, you know, from our experience, locally, it's not that bad. In fact, there's incredible stuff happening. Has anybody here ever been to Copenhagen? Again, 25, 30 years ago, 18% unemployment. They were bankrupt. And the question was, what do? They decided to reclaim public wealth. They wanted to, for example, build a whole new metro system, but one little thing, they couldn't raise taxes to do it. They were already taxed up the kazoo. Here's the big lesson here. A city or a county or a state needs to not only know what it owes, but it needs to know what it owns. And it needs to understand what it owns. They said, what's the return on those public assets? Is it a good enough return on those assets? What they said is, what if we managed it better? What if we had a higher rate of return? Could we buy the metro system with that? And in fact, that is what they did. Our view is that we've got to become a nation of problem solvers, not a nation of problem identifiers.
So thank you all very much.